On a deserted street, an exhausted police officer notices something unusual. A hungry and dirty puppy wouldn't stop following him. Upon discovering the secret hidden in the dog's collar, his world turned upside down. What he found on that road changed his life forever. Before hearing this emotional account, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories. The dark sky of Chicago was dotted with distant lights when Sergeant Jack Miller left the police station after another long shift. His footsteps echoed in the empty streets of the Lincoln Park neighborhood, mixing with the occasional hum of a car passing in the distance. Fatigue weighed on his shoulders, but the prospect of getting home kept him moving. As he walked, Jack let his mind wander, thinking about what he could prepare for dinner. Maybe instant noodles, quick and practical, or perhaps a simple sandwich. He wasn't in the mood to cook something elaborate at that hour of the night. It was then that a subtle sound caught his attention. At first, he thought it was just the echo of his own footsteps, but he soon realized there was something more. Turning around, Jack spotted a small figure moving in the shadows. Instinctively, he reached for his waist, where his gun would normally be, but soon relaxed when he realized it was just a dog. The animal was a skinny and dirty mutt, with tangled fur and droopy ears, its large dark eyes fixed on Jack with an almost human intensity. The police officer frowned, intrigued by the dog's persistence in following him. "Go away, buddy," Jack said, making a gesture with his hand to shoo the animal away. "I don't have anything for you." But the dog didn't move. It just stood there, staring at Jack as if it wanted to say something. The officer sighed, too tired to deal with this unusual situation. He shrugged and resumed his way, hoping the dog would eventually lose interest and go away. However, with each step Jack took, the dog followed him, maintaining a constant distance. The sound of the animal's paws on the asphalt mingled with the rhythm of the officer's steps, creating a strange nocturnal symphony. After a few minutes of this silent dance, Jack stopped again. Something about this situation didn't seem normal. He turned to face the dog, which was now sitting, still observing him with those intense eyes. "What do you want, huh?" Jack asked, more to himself than to the animal. Slowly, he bent down, cautiously extending his hand. The dog didn't back away, allowing Jack to approach. It was then that the officer noticed something attached to the makeshift collar the animal was wearing. Carefully, Jack removed a crumpled and dirty piece of paper. He unfolded it with curiosity, feeling his heart race as he read the words written in childish, shaky handwriting. "Please help. My little brother is very sick. We have no food or water. I'm very scared. If anyone reads this, please help us." Jack felt a tightness in his chest. The message was clear. There were children in danger, alone and desperate. His police instinct and his human heart went on high alert. "Where are they, boy?" he asked the dog, as if the animal could answer. To his surprise, the dog stood up and started walking, looking back as if calling Jack to follow him. Without hesitation, the officer accompanied the animal. The streets of Lincoln Park, usually quiet at that hour, seemed even more silent. The dog guided Jack through narrow alleys and dark back streets, moving farther and farther away from the busier areas of the neighborhood. Finally, they arrived at an old, decaying building. The peeling facade and broken windows told a story of abandonment and neglect. The dog stopped in front of the building's entrance, looking at Jack as if to say, "It's here." Jack hesitated for a moment. As a police officer, he knew the risks of entering an unknown location without backup. But the child's plea for help echoed in his mind, overriding any apprehension. With determined steps, he entered the building. The smell of mold and abandonment hit him immediately. The stairs creaked under his feet as he climbed, guided by the dog that seemed to know exactly where to go. On the third floor, the animal stopped in front of a door. Jack could hear faint sounds coming from inside the apartment. His heart was racing when he knocked on the door. "Hello? Is anyone there? Police!" he called, trying to keep his voice steady. Silence. Only the echo of his own voice reverberated through the empty hallway. Jack knocked again, harder this time. "If there's anyone in there, please answer. I'm here to help." Once again, no response. The dog beside him began to scratch at the door, whining softly. Jack's concern grew with each passing second. If there were children in there, why weren't they responding? Were they injured? Or worse? Making a quick decision, Jack tested the doorknob. To his surprise, the door wasn't locked. With a creak, it opened, revealing the darkness of the apartment. The smell of abandonment was even stronger inside. Jack fumbled along the wall for a light switch, finding it after a few seconds. The dim light of a bare bulb illuminated a scene that made his heart clench. In the corner of the room, huddled against the wall, was a boy. He couldn't have been more than 8 years old. In his arms he held a baby who appeared to be sleeping. Or perhaps... Jack approached slowly, trying not to startle the child. "Hi," he said softly. "My name is Jack. I'm a police officer. I'm here to help you." The boy raised his eyes, full of fear and distrust. He clutched the baby tighter to his chest, as if trying to protect it. "It's okay," Jack continued, crouching down to be at the boy's eye level. "I'm not going to hurt you. I want to help. Is your little brother sick?" Slowly, the boy nodded. Jack could then see how thin the child was, with deep circles under his eyes and dirty clothes. "What's your name?" Jack asked, keeping his voice calm. "Ethan," the boy responded, almost in a whisper. "And what's your little brother's name?" "Noah," said Ethan, looking at the baby in his arms. Jack moved closer, trying to assess the baby's condition. Noah was pale and his breathing seemed irregular. "Ethan, we need to take your brother to the hospital. He needs a doctor. Do you trust me?" The boy hesitated, looking from Jack to the dog, which was now beside him, as if offering silent support. "Did Max bring you?" Ethan asked, surprising Jack. "Max? Is that his name?" Jack smiled, patting the dog's head. "Yes, he brought me here. It was very brave of you to send that message with him." Ethan relaxed a little, allowing Jack to come closer. "Come on, we need to go," Jack said, extending his arms. "Can I carry your brother?" Reluctantly, Ethan handed Noah to Jack. The officer carefully took the baby, feeling the heat of the fever through the thin clothes. "You're coming with me, Ethan. I won't leave you alone. I promise." Ethan stood up, his legs trembling with weakness. Jack put his free arm around the boy's shoulders, guiding him out of the apartment. Max followed them, like a silent guardian. As they descended the stairs, Jack was already calling the station, requesting an ambulance urgently. His heart was racing, a mixture of concern and determination. These children needed help, and he would do everything in his power to protect them. As they left the building, the cool night air seemed to awaken Ethan a bit. He looked at Jack, his eyes shining with a mixture of fear and hope. "Is everything going to be okay?" the boy asked, his voice small and uncertain. Jack gently squeezed Ethan's shoulder. "Yes, it will. I promise I'll take care of you." While they waited for the ambulance, Jack looked up at the sky. The night that had begun as just another ordinary workday had transformed into something much bigger. He didn't know what the future held for these children, but he was determined to make a difference in their lives. The distant sound of the siren broke the silence of the night. Help was coming, and with it, perhaps, a new chance for Ethan and Noah. "Understood. I'll continue." The translation from where I left off, maintaining the same level of detail and faithfulness to the original text. Here's the next part of the story. The wail of the siren tore through the night's silence, announcing the ambulance's arrival. Jack felt a mix of relief and apprehension as the red and blue lights illuminated the deserted street. Ethan, beside him, clung to his leg, his wide eyes fixed on the approaching vehicle. "It's okay, Ethan," Jack murmured, running his hand through the boy's disheveled hair. "They're good people who've come to help Noah." The ambulance stopped, and 2 paramedics jumped out of the vehicle with professional efficiency. Jack quickly explained the situation while handing baby Noah over to their care. The younger of the paramedics, a man with a kind face, knelt in front of Ethan. "Hey, champ," he said with a reassuring smile. "My name's Mike. We're going to take very good care of your little brother, okay?" Ethan nodded silently, his eyes never leaving Noah's fragile body, now lying on the stretcher. "Can he come with me?" Jack asked, indicating Ethan with a gesture. The older paramedic agreed. Of course there's room. It's better to keep the brothers together. As they prepared to leave, Jack noticed Max, the faithful dog, watching everything closely. "What about the dog?" he asked hesitantly. Mike, the younger paramedic, looked at Max and then at Ethan's anxious face. With an understanding sigh, he said, "Normally it's not allowed, but I think we can make an exception. He seems to be important to the boy." Carefully, everyone boarded the ambulance. Ethan settled next to Jack with Max at their feet. The vehicle departed for the hospital, siren blaring, cutting through the silence of the early morning. During the journey, Jack observed Ethan, who kept his eyes fixed on Noah. The officer felt his heart tighten, as he saw the fear and concern etched on the young boy's face. "Ethan," Jack called softly, "can you tell me what happened? Where are your parents?" The boy swallowed hard, his eyes filling with tears. "Mom, she left," he whispered. "Said she'd be back soon, but it's been many days." Jack felt a wave of anger and sadness wash over him. How could someone abandon two children like this? He took a deep breath, trying to stay calm for Ethan's sake. "How long have you been alone?" he asked gently. Ethan furrowed his brow, as if trying to remember. "I don't know. Many days. The food ran out. Noah got sick." The boy's voice faltered, and he began to sob silently. Jack wrapped an arm around him, pulling him close. Max raised his head, placing it on Ethan's lap in a gesture of comfort. "You were very brave, Ethan," Jack said, his voice firm and reassuring. "You took care of your brother and found a way to ask for help. I'm very proud of you." The words seemed to calm the boy a bit, and he snuggled closer to Jack. Arriving at the hospital, a team of doctors was already waiting for them. Noah was quickly taken to the pediatric emergency room, leaving Ethan even more anxious. "Easy, they'll take good care of him," Jack assured, guiding Ethan to the waiting room. Max faithfully followed them, receiving curious looks from the hospital staff, but no one dared to question his presence. While they waited, Jack tried to get more information from Ethan. Between sobs and broken sentences, the boy told a story of neglect and abandonment that broke the officer's heart. The children's mother, Sarah, had apparently met a rich man and decided to leave everything behind, including her children. She promised to return in a few days, but time passed and she never came back. Ethan, at just 8 years old, found himself responsible for caring for a baby of a few months. "Do you know this man's name, or where your mother might have gone?" Jack asked, already thinking about how he could track down the woman. Ethan shook his head. "No, she just said she was going on a trip, that she was going to be happy." Anger bubbled inside Jack, but he kept it under control. His priority now was to take care of these children. Hours passed. Ethan eventually fell asleep in Jack's lap, physically and emotionally exhausted. Max remained vigilant at their feet like a silent guardian. Finally, a doctor appeared in the waiting room. "Family of Noah Parker?" he called. Jack carefully stood up, still holding Ethan. "Here," he responded, his heart racing with anxiety. The doctor approached, his face serious but not alarming. "The baby is stable now," he informed. "He was severely dehydrated and malnourished, but responded well to treatment. We'll keep him under observation for a few days." Jack let out a sigh of relief he didn't know he was holding. "And what about Ethan?" he asked, looking at the sleeping boy in his arms. The doctor examined Ethan with experienced eyes. "He needs to be examined too. Malnutrition, possible dehydration. We'll do a complete checkup." At that moment, a social worker approached. She introduced herself as Amanda and explained that she had been called due to the children's situation. "Officer Miller," she said, her tone professional but gentle, "we need to discuss what will happen to these children now. Is there any relative we can contact?" Jack shook his head. "I don't have that information yet. From what Ethan told me, they were abandoned by their mother. He didn't mention any other family members." Amanda nodded, her face showing a mixture of sadness and determination. "I see. In that case, we'll have to arrange temporary shelter for them while we investigate the situation." The words "temporary shelter" made something twist inside Jack. The idea of separating the brothers, of placing them in a strange environment. After everything they had been through seemed wrong. "Isn't there another option?" he asked, his voice betraying his concern. Amanda looked at him sympathetically. "Unfortunately, without a legal guardian—" Jack interrupted, the words coming out of his mouth before he could think. "What if I take responsibility for them?" "Temporarily, of course, until we find a permanent solution." The social worker stared at him in surprise. "Officer, that's unusual. There are procedures, evaluations—" "I know," Jack said, his determination growing. "But these children have been through so much. Separating them now, it doesn't seem right. I have the means, space at home. I can take care of them while we resolve this situation." Amanda looked thoughtful. "This would require a series of approvals, background check." "I'm a police officer," Jack argued. "My background is impeccable. I can provide all the necessary references." The social worker considered for a moment, looking from Jack to Ethan, still asleep in his arms, and to Max faithfully by their side. "All right," she finally said, "I'll start the process, but understand it will be temporary, and there will be follow-up visits, evaluations." "I completely understand," Jack nodded, feeling a mix of relief and nervousness. "I'll do whatever it takes." As Amanda walked away to make some calls, Jack looked at Ethan. The boy looked so small and vulnerable in his arms. A wave of protection washed over him. "It's going to be all right," he murmured, more to himself than to the sleeping child. "I promise." The next few hours were a whirlwind of paperwork, medical exams, and conversations with authorities. Ethan was examined and, although malnourished and tired, he didn't present any serious health problems. As the sun began to rise, painting the sky in shades of pink, Jack found himself sitting in an uncomfortable hospital chair, with Ethan curled up beside him and Max at his feet. Noah was in the neonatal ICU receiving the necessary care. Exhausted but determined, Jack looked out the window. The city was beginning to awake, oblivious to the drama that had unfolded during the night. For him, however, the world had completely changed. He didn't know exactly what the future held, but of one thing he was certain: he would do everything in his power to protect these children. With that thought, he closed his eyes, allowing himself a brief moment of rest as the new day announced itself, bringing with it promises of challenges and perhaps a new and unexpected family. Understood. I'll continue the translation from where I left off, maintaining the same level of detail and faithfulness to the original text. Here's the next part of the story. The soft sound of footsteps in the hospital corridor woke Jack from his restless "Terpadie." He blinked a few times, trying to orient himself. Ethan was still sleeping beside him, curled up in the uncomfortable chair, with Max vigilant at their feet. The officer rubbed his eyes, feeling the weight of fatigue and the responsibility he had assumed. A nurse approached with a gentle smile. "Officer Miller, baby Noah is responding well to treatment. If you'd like to see him, you can come with me." Jack nodded, carefully standing up so as not to wake Ethan. He followed the nurse to the neonatal ICU, where Noah was resting in an incubator, connected to tubes and monitors. Jack's heart tightened at the sight of the baby looking so fragile and small. "He's much better," the nurse assured him. "The dehydration was severe, but we're correcting it. In a few days, he'll be able to move to a regular room." Jack placed his hand on the incubator's glass, as if wanting to touch the baby. "Thank you," he murmured, feeling a wave of relief wash over him. Upon returning to the waiting room, he found Ethan awake, his eyes wide with fear. As soon as he saw Jack, the boy got up, running to hug him. "I thought you had gone away," Ethan sobbed, clinging to Jack's waist. The officer knelt down, getting to eye level with the boy. "Hey, it's okay. I promised I wouldn't leave you, remember? I just went to see Noah. He's getting better." Ethan relaxed a bit, but still held onto Jack's shirt as if afraid he might disappear. "I'm hungry," the boy admitted timidly. Jack smiled. "Let's fix that right now. How about a champion's breakfast?" After a substantial meal in the hospital cafeteria, where Ethan ate as if he hadn't seen food in days, which Jack realized, sadly, was probably true, they returned to the room where Noah was. The social worker, Amanda, found them there. Her face was serious but not threatening. "Officer Miller, can we talk for a moment?" Jack nodded, asking a nurse to stay with Ethan for a few minutes. He followed Amanda to a private room, his heart pounding with apprehension. "The initial checks have been completed," Amanda began. "Given your position as a police officer and the positive reports from your superiors, it has been decided that you can temporarily be the children's guardian." Jack let out a sigh of relief he didn't know he was holding. Amanda continued, "However, this is conditional. There will be regular visits, ongoing evaluations, and we need to continue looking for relatives who can take permanent custody." "I understand," Jack nodded. "I'll do whatever it takes to ensure their well-being." "Good," Amanda smiled slightly. "Now let's discuss the next steps. Noah will stay in the hospital for a few more days, but Ethan can be discharged today. Are you prepared to take him home?" The reality of the situation hit Jack like a punch. He had nothing prepared at home for a child. No extra bed, no clothes, no toys. Seeing the hesitation on Jack's face, Amanda added, "We have some resources available to help in situations like this. I can arrange for some essential items to get you started." Jack nodded, grateful. "That would be a big help. Thank you." The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity. Jack called the police station, explaining the situation and asking for a few days off. His superior, though surprised, was understanding and assured him he would give all the necessary support. Meanwhile, Ethan underwent a few more exams and received overdue vaccinations. The boy remained quiet throughout the process, clinging to Jack's hand as if it were his only anchor in the world. By late afternoon, they were ready to go. Amanda appeared with a suitcase containing clothes, hygiene products, and some toys for Ethan. "Remember," she told Jack, "if there's any problem, call me immediately. Shall be making regular visits to check how you're adapting." Jack thanked her, picking up the suitcase with one hand and holding Ethan with the other. Max, who had miraculously been allowed to stay in the hospital all this time, faithfully followed them. The journey to Jack's apartment was silent. Ethan looked out the car window, his wide eyes absorbing the passing city. Occasionally he cast furtive glances at Jack, as if he still couldn't believe all of this was real. Arriving at the modest building where Jack lived, the officer felt a pang of nervousness. His bachelor apartment certainly wasn't the most welcoming place for a child, but it would have to do for now. "Well, this is where I live," Jack said, opening the door. "It's not much, but—" He stopped when he saw Ethan's expression. The boy was looking around with a mixture of admiration and disbelief, as if he had entered a palace. "It's so clean," Ethan murmured, timidly touching the wall. Jack's heart tightened. What had this child been through to find a simple apartment? So impressive. "Come on, I'll show you where you'll sleep," Jack said, guiding Ethan to the guest room. It was a small room, with just a single bed and a wardrobe, but to Ethan it seemed like an unimaginable luxury. "This bed is all mine?" the boy asked, his voice almost a whisper. Jack nodded, fighting against the lump forming in his throat. "Yes, Ethan. It's all yours." Slowly, as if fearing everything would disappear, Ethan climbed onto the bed. His small body sank into the soft mattress, and a shy smile appeared on his face. "Thank you," he said, looking at Jack with eyes bright with unshed tears. At that moment, Jack knew that no matter how difficult it might be, he had made the right decision. This child deserved a home, security, love, and he would do everything in his power to provide that. "How about a nice warm bath, and then we'll have something tasty for dinner?" Jack suggested, trying to keep his voice steady despite the emotion consuming him. Ethan nodded enthusiastically, jumping off the bed. Max, who had settled on the room's rug, raised his head, wagging his tail. As he helped Ethan with his bath, Jack couldn't help but notice the bruises and scars that marked the boy's thin body. Each mark told a story of neglect and suffering that made his blood boil. But now wasn't the time for anger. It was time to care, to heal. After the bath, dressed in new, clean pajamas, Ethan looked like a different child. His hair, now washed and combed, revealed soft curls that framed his face. His eyes, although still carrying shadows of the past, shone with a new hope. In the kitchen, Jack prepared a simple but nutritious meal. Ethan ate with enthusiasm, praising every forkful as if it were the best feast in the world. Max received his share, contentedly lying at their feet. After dinner, sitting on the living room couch, Jack turned on the television. Ethan watched the cartoons, fascinated, something he clearly wasn't used to seeing. "Jack," Ethan called softly after a while. "Yes? When is Noah coming here?" Jack smiled, putting his arm around the boy's shoulders. "In a few days, the doctors need to make sure he's very strong before he leaves the hospital." Ethan nodded, thoughtful. "And are we going to stay here forever?" The question caught Jack by surprise. How to explain the complexity of the situation to a child who had already been through so much? "For now, yes," he answered carefully. "But Ethan, you need to understand that this might be temporary. We're trying to find your family, someone who can take care of you and Noah permanently." Ethan's face contorted in an expression of fear. "But I don't want to go away. I want to stay with you." Jack pulled the boy closer, feeling his small body tremble. "Hey, calm down. Let's not worry about that now, okay? At the moment, you're safe here. That's what matters." Ethan snuggled closer, his eyes heavy with sleep. "Promise you won't send me away?" "I promise. I'll do everything I can to take care of you and Noah," Jack responded, choosing his words carefully. "Now, how about we go to sleep? It's been a long day." He took Ethan to the bedroom, tucking him into the soft bed. Max jumped onto the bed, curling up at the boy's feet like a furry guardian. "Good night, Ethan," Jack said softly, stroking the boy's hair. "Good night, Dad," Ethan murmured, already almost asleep. Jack froze, his heart racing. That simple word, said so naturally, hit him like lightning. He left the room silently, closing the door behind him. In the hallway, he leaned against the wall, letting the tears he had been holding back all day finally fall. The responsibility, the fear, the joy, all mixed in his chest. He looked at the closed door of the room where Ethan slept and made a silent promise. No matter what happened, he would protect this child. And Noah. They deserved a home, a family. And maybe, just maybe, he could be that family. With a deep sigh, Jack headed to his own room. The next day would bring new challenges, but for the first time in a long time he felt truly alive, with a purpose greater than himself. He lay down, fatigue finally overcoming him. His last thought before falling asleep was the image of Ethan smiling, safe and happy, and at that moment Jack knew his life would never be the same again. Understood. I'll continue the translation from where we left off, maintaining the same level of detail and faithfulness to the original text. Here's the next part of the story. The years passed, bringing with them a series of changes and challenges for the Miller family. Ethan, now 13 years old, was at the height of adolescence, facing all the complexities of this phase of life. Noah, at 5 years old, was an energetic and curious little boy, always asking questions and exploring the world around him. Jack, for his part, learned daily about the joys and difficulties of being a father to two boys at such different stages of life. His work as a police officer remained demanding, but he always strived to balance professional responsibilities with family ones. One Saturday afternoon, while the family was enjoying a picnic in the park, Ethan surprised Jack with an unexpected question. "Dad," he began hesitantly, "do you think that I look like her?" Jack didn't need to ask who Ethan was referring to. In recent years, the boy rarely spoke about his biological mother, but Jack knew the subject still lingered in his mind. "Well, champ," Jack answered carefully, "you have her eyes, and maybe her smile. But you know what's more important?" Ethan looked at him curious. "What's more important is who you choose to be," Jack continued. "And you, Ethan, choose to be kind, brave, and a great brother to Noah. That comes from inside you." Ethan smiled, seeming relieved. "Thanks, Dad." As he watched Ethan run off to play with Noah, Jack reflected on how dealing with the children's past was a constant challenge. He always strived to be honest, but also to protect them from painful memories. The following weeks brought new challenges. Ethan began to show signs of rebellion at school, something that caught Jack off guard. Summoned to a meeting with the principal, he heard reports of disruptive behavior and falling grades. "Ethan is a smart boy," the principal explained, "but lately he's been problematic." Jack felt a mixture of concern and frustration. That night, after Noah went to bed, he called Ethan for a serious talk. "What's going on, son?" he asked, keeping his voice calm but firm. Ethan shrugged, avoiding his father's gaze. "Nothing." "Ethan," Jack insisted, "I know something's wrong. Please, talk to me." After a long silence, Ethan finally broke down. "It's just that sometimes I feel like I don't belong anywhere," he admitted, tears in his eyes. "At school, everyone has a normal story, and I'm the adopted kid, the one who was abandoned." Jack's heart broke hearing these words. He pulled Ethan into a tight hug. "Listen carefully, Ethan," he said firmly. "You belong here, with me, with Noah. We are a family. And your story, it shows how strong and incredible you are. You've overcome so much." Ethan sobbed against Jack's chest. "But what if I end up like her? What if I also abandon the people I love?" Jack held Ethan's face between his hands, looking directly into his eyes. "You are not defined by other people's mistakes, Ethan. You are your own individual, with your own choices. And I know, deep in my heart, that you're going to make incredible choices in life." In the days that followed, Jack worked with Ethan to improve his performance at school. They established a study routine, and Jack made sure he was always available to talk, no matter the subject. Meanwhile, Noah faced his own challenges in kindergarten. Naturally shy, he had difficulties making friends. Jack and Ethan united to help him, organizing small get-togethers with classmates and encouraging Noah to express himself. One day, during dinner, Noah surprised everyone with an exciting announcement. "Dad, Ethan!" he exclaimed, almost jumping in his chair. "I was chosen to be the narrator in the school play." Jack and Ethan exchanged looks of surprise and joy. "That's amazing, champ," Jack smiled, ruffling Noah's hair. "You're going to nail it, little guy," Ethan added, giving his younger brother a high five. Seeing the sparkle in Noah's eyes and the pride on Ethan's face made Jack realize how far they had come as a family. Every small victory was celebrated together, every challenge faced united. As the months passed, the family dynamic continued to evolve. Ethan, overcoming his rebellious phase, began to excel in school, especially in science. Noah, gaining confidence, made new friends and did well in his activities. Jack, in turn, was promoted to lieutenant, a recognition for his years of dedicated service. The promotion came with more responsibilities, but also with the flexibility to spend more time at home with the boys. One night, as they watched a movie together in the living room, Jack looked at his sons. Ethan, now almost his height, was laughing at a joke in the movie. Noah, nestled between them, was animatedly commenting on every scene. At that moment, Jack felt a wave of gratitude so strong it almost left him breathless. 5 years ago, he was a lonely man, focused only on his career. Now he was the father of 2 wonderful boys, living a life he had never imagined for himself, but which he wouldn't trade for anything in the world. "Hey, you two," Jack said softly, drawing the boy's attention. "You know I love you, right?" Ethan smiled, a little embarrassed but visibly touched. "We love you too, Dad." Noah, always the more expressive one, threw himself into Jack's arms. "I love you so much, Daddy." As he hugged his sons, Jack thought about all the difficulties they had faced and overcome together. Ethan's night terrors, Noah's crying fits, the doubts and fears he himself had faced as a first-time father. But for every difficult moment, there were dozens of moments of pure joy. The laughter during pillow fights, birthday celebrations, family game nights, spontaneous hugs, and words of love exchanged daily. They weren't a conventional family, true, but the love that united them was stronger than any blood tie could be. They were 3 hearts that had found each other amidst chaos and created a home together. As the movie continued on TV, largely ignored, Jack made a silent promise. No matter what the future held, they would face it together, as a family, as the Millers. And on that couch, embracing his sons, Jack knew he had found the true meaning of happiness. It wasn't a perfect life, but it was theirs. And it was wonderful. In its imperfection. Understood. I'll continue the translation from where we left off, maintaining the same level of detail and faithfulness to the original text. Here's the next part of the story. The day dawned with a palpable mixture of excitement and nervousness in the air. Jack woke up early, finding Ethan already up, anxious and restless. "Today's the day, right?" the boy asked, his eyes shining. With a mix of hope and apprehension, Jack smiled, affectionately ruffling Ethan's hair. "Yes, champ, today we're bringing Noah home." After a hurried breakfast, the two headed to the hospital. Ethan held Jack's hand firmly, as if afraid something might prevent them from picking up Noah. In the hospital room, they found the baby awake, his curious little eyes observing everything around him. The nurse was finishing preparing Noah for discharge, dressing him in new clothes that Jack had bought. "Hello, little warrior," Jack greeted, feeling a wave of emotion upon seeing how Noah had improved. The baby, once so fragile, now looked stronger and healthier. Ethan approached the bed timidly, looking at his brother with a mixture of fascination and concern. "Hi, Noah," he whispered. "We're going home." The nurse smiled, handing Noah to Jack's arms. "He's ready to go. Remember the instructions about feeding and medication. If there's any problem, don't hesitate to contact us." With Noah secure in his arms and Ethan by his side, Jack felt the weight of the responsibility he was taking on. But along with that weight came a sense of completeness he had never experienced before. The way back home was silent, each lost in their own thoughts. Ethan alternated between looking out the window and observing his brother, as if he still couldn't believe all this was real. Arriving at the apartment, Jack hesitated for a moment before opening the door. "Well, here we are," he said, looking at Ethan and then at Noah. "Our home." The word "our" didn't go unnoticed by Ethan, who smiled shyly. The first days with Noah at home were an emotional and challenging roller coaster. Sleepless nights became the norm, with Jack alternating between feeding the baby and calming Ethan, who sometimes woke up with nightmares. Despite the exhaustion, Jack was surprised at how easily he adapted to the new routine. Ethan, in turn, proved to be a dedicated older brother, always wanting to help with Noah, even if that meant just holding the bottle or singing an off-key lullaby. One night, as Jack was rocking Noah to sleep, he heard a noise coming from the kitchen. He found Ethan trying to reach the glasses in the high cabinet. "Hey, careful there," Jack said, hurrying to help. "What are you doing?" Ethan lowered his gaze, looking embarrassed. I wanted to get water for you. You look so tired." Jack felt his heart melt. He placed Noah in the portable crib he kept in the living room and knelt in front of Ethan. "Thank you, champ," he said, looking into the boy's eyes. "That was very kind of you. But remember, you don't have to do things alone. You can always ask me for help, okay?" Ethan nodded, a small smile appearing on his face. "Okay, Dad." The word still caught Jack by surprise every time Ethan used it, filling him with an emotion he could barely describe. The days turned into weeks, and slowly a routine began to establish itself. Jack returned to work, managing to get a special arrangement that allowed him flexible hours. Ethan started attending tutoring classes, preparing to eventually return to regular school. Amanda's visits, the social worker, became less frequent as she saw the progress of the makeshift family. During one of these visits, she pulled Jack aside. "You know, Officer Miller," she began, a soft smile on her face, "when you offered to take care of these children, I confess I had my doubts. But seeing you now, it's as if you were meant to be a family." Jack felt a lump in his throat. They changed my life," he admitted. "I can't imagine my days without them anymore." Amanda nodded understandingly. "Have you thought about making this permanent? Adoption is a long and complicated process, but the idea hung in the air, making Jack's heart race. Adoption, making official what his heart already knew to be true. That night, after the children were asleep, Jack stayed awake, thinking about Amanda's suggestion. The idea of adopting Ethan and Noah both scared and excited him. It was a big step, a huge responsibility. His thoughts were interrupted by a cry coming from the children's room. As he entered, he found Ethan consoling Noah, softly humming a lullaby that Jack used to sing. The A seen before him was the answer Jack needed. These boys were already his sons in every way that mattered. Making it official was just the next natural step. The next morning, during breakfast, Jack decided to approach the subject with Ethan. "Ethan," he began, suddenly feeling nervous, "what would you think if I officially became your father, and Noah's too?" Ethan's eyes widened, a mixture of hope and fear in his gaze. "How you mean, forever?" Jack nodded, feeling tears forming in his eyes. "Yes, champ. Forever." For a moment, Ethan was silent, processing the information. Then, without warning, he threw himself into Jack's arms, sobbing. "Yes, yes, yes," he exclaimed. Between tears, "I want you to be our dad forever." Hugging Ethan tightly, Jack felt as if his heart might explode with happiness. At that moment, he knew that no matter what challenges the future might bring, they would face them together, as a family. The adoption process would be long and sometimes frustrating. There would be mountains of paperwork, interviews, evaluations. But Jack was determined. Ethan and Noah deserved stability, security, and above all, love. And he was more than willing to offer all of that. That night, with Ethan snuggled on one side and Noah sleeping peacefully in his crib on the other, Jack reflected on how his life had completely changed in such a short time. From a career-focused bachelor, he had transformed into a dedicated father of two wonderful boys. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Together, they were stronger. And with love, patience, and determination, they would face any obstacle that came their way. As sleep enveloped him, Jack smiled, grateful for the unexpected path life had presented him. A path that led him to discover the true meaning of family and unconditional love. End of story.